Everyone. Welcome to Indic seminars. We have Dr. Ankit Shah here today, a very uh, eminent speaker, researcher, and also a writer of several books. The latest has been Geopolitics, Decoding Intents, Narratives, Lies, and Future. And he has been a popular figure in predicting various aspects in the Bharatiya economy and in general politics. Today, he has also been a professor, associate professor at IIM. And of course, you can search him up on Google and you'll see his profile is fantastic. He'll be talking about emergence of Sanatan Bharatiya economics today and give us an overview of what happened and what's going to happen in the future. Over to you, Dr. Shah.
Thank you for the kind introduction. A little bit of error in the introduction. I'm not a professor. So I served at IMA as an academic and research associate. And then how I have my own consultancy on business simulation on economic scenario and macroeconomic trends. Um, before we begin on the topic, let me set a little bit of a background of what do I mean by this entire term of what we call as emergence of Sanatan economics.
So, Ankit,
And
your
why?
video is off, by the way. So, if you want to start the video.
Oh,
Yeah. Okay, excellent. Sorry.
okay. It's visible?
Yeah, it's good.
Okay. So let me set the background for why that particular terminology, Sanatan economics, and why would I call it as emergence. So uh, humanity has always been operating in a fashion that for thousands of years, that in terms of concept of money, before that we had this particular concept of money. How we've been operating overall is barter system of trade. And this has been true for thousands of years of human history. I mean, the paper currency and money concept came very recently. Now, to understand the barter system of trade, how it used to operate. It used to operate by a family unit or a community unit producing a complete end product and a service. And in exchange of that completed end product and service, they would be able to buy another end product and service from another community or a family. So this this was the human society where uh, since the entire family or the community unit is involved in the economic activity, there never used to be the concept of what we call as unemployment. There never used to be a concept of what we call as inflation. There never used to be a concept of what we call as overproduction or underproduction, because those days there usually be those kind of storage facilities. So no overproduction, no underproduction, no inflation, and no unemployment, no poverty. Now, what happens is in this kind of a society, since you are you have the ability to make the complete product or service within your family and community unit, not that you have bifurcated those processes and outsourced those processes to other units or things like that. Now what happens with that is, and then you don't have storage facilities of the kind. So majority scenarios would be where there is no overproduction and underproduction, which means no exploitation of natural resources like that we see today. And no concept of hyper consumerism, because, as I said, that a completed product and services is required for the exchange. Now, when we came to the concept of money, what happened was initially the monarchs used to come up with these coins and just to bring the trust of people, they would put their faces on those gold and silver coins. Gold and silver, particularly because that is what is the real currency as per Sanatan. Now, just to have people's trust, the kings or the monarchs or the queens would put up their own faces on it. Now, whenever the monarchs want to do what we call as the concept of bringing a financial reset or what we call as demonetization, they simply need to do one thing, and that is that they would withdraw those gold and silver coins, demonetize them, melt that gold and silver, and accumulate the wealth, and then issue cheaper metal coins in the society, circulate the cheaper metal coins, and that is how this used to go on. Now, over a period of time, when paper currency began, uh, uh, slowly and gradually, um, from gold and silver to cheaper metals, from cheaper metals to paper, and then again that you had to um, have to build trust with the people. You did saying, okay, I'm going to print this much paper, but that will represent this much gold and silver. Okay, so you see how the dilution of the concept of money began right from precious metals to paper, paper representing some amount of gold and silver, and eventually in 1971, as we all know, what happened was President Nixon completely removed the gold convertibility, and then the paper represented nothing. Okay, totally printed out of thin air. That is how the fiat dollar or fiat currencies were born in 1971. But coming back to those previous days, once these things used to happen, um, you found out that the first starting point of imposing a single country reserve currency format on the world began with Surat port, where the East India Company was established in the 1600s. Now, why I'm emphasizing on the Surat port particularly is because we are finding the reversal starting from that very particular port, with the IMEC corridor, which will connect the Gujarat ports and Mumbai with the Middle East and Europe further. So the reversal also of dollarization begins from the Surat port. So the single country reserve currency format began uh, about 400 years back with that East India Company establishing itself in the Surat port, imposing pound as a single country currency, reserve currency all across the world on all colonies, with that colonization process. Now, this is the first time when uh, humanity brought up this experiment of what we call as job as an empowerment concept. This was the beginning. In fact, it was Adam Smith's capitalism who came up with this idea that let's do one thing. We'll have um, benefits of division of labor. Say for example, there are 15 shirts in the market, 15 different designs of shirts, 15 different families making those 15 designs of shirts. Adam Smith suddenly came up and said, let's do one thing. We'll remove 14 designs from the market, Abrahamic standardization. Um, we'll make only one design of shirt. You all 15 families will now become my employees and hand over all the corpus to me. I'll put up a factory out of this. So, with this kind of benefit of division of labor of Adam Smith capitalism, what happened at the extreme end was we came up with a society where 90% wealth of the country got handed over to 5% people. So this entire family unit entrepreneurship model, which is based on Sanatan dharmic principles, was broken worldwide and converted into a mechanism of human trafficking of jobs from classroom to job, and particularly that need to ensure that in the classroom the students need to be completely be unaware of what the market realities are. So the British devised the classroom format in a fashion where um, you only churn out slaves because they are packed within four walls, totally unaware of market realities, certainly cannot learn entrepreneurship. And the only option they have after wasting 15, 20 years is a job. Okay, so this entire human trafficking things, there were multiple objectives. One certainly was that in the colonies, They didn't wanted people to have the time to think of independence or their rights, which goes along with this job model, because 12 hours you are in control of somebody else. Um, Not just that, they introduced co-education with the particular objective that in Abrahamic economics, because the whole thought process of Abrahamic economics comes from one life concept of hyper consumerism, where they say this is the only life because you are the body and soul is just the vehicle. Now, Sanatan economics says you are the soul, body is just a vehicle. So Sanatan is saying that you are going to have life cycles, which means that you are going to take care of your parents, and you are also going to take care that the next generation at least completes their education. At least that is what your responsibility is towards uh, the life cycle economics, which is why the NRI is being very, very successful in the foreign nations, not because they were intelligent, but because they were dharmic. Because the concept of handling finance, as I said, comes from the Sanatan principle of life cycle, that you are accountable to the life cycle, the previous generation and the next generation, which means that you are duty bound to uh, bring stability to your marriage. Obviously, then you have additional dharmic concepts of all the Sat Feras talking only about duty. None of the seven oaths of marriage talking any about the rights of the couple. So this kind of a stability brings that savings kind of a lifestyle in the life cycle economics that Sanatan brings, which is why I say that this entire uh, narrative that there was brain drain from Bharat is a fake narrative. None of these were intelligent. These concept of handling finance and that economic success was because of the dharmic concept of handling finance. None of the NRIs learned uh, Sanatan economics because it was taught in a Western classroom that you need to take care of parents and the next generation. This came from Dharm. None of these ideas of handling finance came from their Abrahamic friend circle. So this entire brain drain thing was a fake narrative. I believe if there was something, it was dharma drain or dharma spread, maybe, if that is the right word. So Abrahamic economics, since they believe that you are the body and soul is just a vehicle, which means you have this only one life. What that means is you want to consume everything in this very life. What that leads you to is focusing only on the material factor of production. Whereas Bharat, with the Sanatan economics model, focuses on the man factor of production. Bharat never focuses on the material factor of production, which is why for 1800 years, if we are having more than 27% on an average contribution to the world GDP out of the last 2000 years, which is more than 85% of the total economic history that we have, known history, um, without English language, without reserve currency format, and without conquering any continents outside of the Indian subcontinent. That is how, because of the Sanatan economics model, this was possible. Now, when you focus on Abrahamic economics, what does it lead to? It leads you to terms which are used in the Western countries like gun culture. Now, why would you add gun and culture together? Okay, you have terminology like war economy. Now, how would you add war with the economy? So in the last 40, 50 years, you're not surprised that despite high-tech weapons, none of the wars America has won at all. I mean, if you look at Vietnam, if you look at Afghanistan, you look at Ukraine right now, you look at Iraq, you look at Syria, none of the conflicts they have closed successfully, because absolutely there is no incentive to close. Because as long as the war continues, the economy functions, because the money being printed from one building in Federal Reserve, shifting to the next building in some defense company, and a second nation being destroyed with that process. So it's simply pocketing by the defense deals, just fooling the US taxpayers. So all these wars were actually on the US taxpayers, not on any other nation. Okay. So what exactly happens with Abrahamic economics? many outcomes. The very first outcome being that you deploy women as a unit of labor for temporary GDP, which was the objective of the British classroom format, that they consider man and women both as a unit of labor for factories. They needed slaves with that 18th century industrialization process. Now, what happens with that is eventually all of the Western countries have lost the birth rates. That was very obvious because when you treat women as a unit of labor during her fertile period and just to shore up your GDP for temporary, ultimately what you find is you have to bring illegals inside Europe, and what you're seeing right now from southern border in the US, uh, citing that you need labor or manpower. This is the excuse, at least this is the official excuse which is being given. We all understand that there are voting repercussions which are uh, more uh, more attractive to the parties that who conduct all this stuff as a policy. So what happens with Abrahamic economics is you have a Gulf which is uh, which has free crude oil coming out from the soil. Uh, the entire economy is based on that free crude oil, and now that they are panicking that what they will do after this. Now the problem with Abrahamic economics is because it's based on just one life. So you don't know what you will do after the after that one life of consumption is completed. So this is what has happened. Russia has lost the birth rates. Japan has lost all the birth rates. China has lost all the birth rates. EU and US has lost all the birth rates. So the wealth of nations only pass on through with as inheritance via family unit economics. Now, what exactly happened that destroyed the family as an institution worldwide was exactly, I believe, the concept of capitalism and communism at extreme ends is nothing but shifting out or outsourcing of uh, family sacrifices outside the family. Okay, that is what capitalism and communism means. Because who is a woke? Woke is a person who is an individual who does not want to do any duties towards the jati, which is community, does not want to do any duties towards the kul, which is the family, does not want to do any duties towards his occupation, which is varna. So all these societies across the world, due to Abrahamic economics, have lost their jati, varna, and kul duties. And a human being who just has rights without any of the duties. Now, imagine if you haven't done any of your duties towards your kul, which is the family, your jati, which is your community, and occupation, then you are relying on the state for the freebies and waiving off of student loans and whatnot. So this is exactly what has happened, brought the collapse of the many of the western parts of the world. Now, if you do understand what Sanatan economics is talking about here is uh, dharm, jati, kul, and varn. If you are able to do all these four duties, uh, then that kind of a society will have economics till eternity because you are only fixing or focusing on the man factor of production and not the material factor of production. Now, because Abrahamic economics looks at material as well, uh, there is no concept of individual wealth in Sanatan economics. That doesn't talk about it. Okay. In other words, what we have is Sampatti and Lakshmi. Lakshmi means that which is put to a collective objective, which means that there is no individualism even in the usage of money. And Sampatti, Sam plus Patti is what you build together. So the wealth creation is also about jointly creating the wealth. So we do not have individual wealth concept in Sanatan economics at all. So I believe that a lot of Abrahamic economics, which were able to exploit the single country reserve currency status, which is why the parents were told that you could throw out your kids at the age of 15, 16, and the state will take care of you, just throw them out. And the kids are very happy going out because, well, they are able to get 1%, 2% loan, which is, I mean, there's no difference between capital and revenue in the West at all because you are enjoying that endless printing machine of dollars. Uh, so what has happened is it's been 500 years and the West still does not know how to earn money. Uh, that's the brutal reality. And once the single country reserve currency status is over, I have a serious doubt on complete wipeout of wealth across the Western assets and all kinds of socialist freebies that are being, whether it be retirement benefits, whether it be Medicare or low interest rate loans, which they were doing, which we are already seeing that the interest rates now are certainly not going to come down, irrespective of how much propaganda and fooling that they do of the Western masses. Um, so what is happening with the de-dollarization process is I see this in terms of Sanatan economics angle that uh, the currency reset will bring back again the real currency, which Sanatan says is physical gold. And as I explained, the concept of financial reset that every time if demonetization or a financial reset has to happen, it happens only with physical accumulation of gold. Now, taking you back to the pound days, what United States did was after the Second World War, during the Second World War, United States collected all the physical gold from the European allies in exchange of war supplies. After collecting all the physical gold, they did the financial reset of the world and imposed US dollar as the new reserve currency of the world. So it is very clear right from day one that the monarchs used to have gold and silver coins. They accumulated the physical gold and silver coins and issued cheaper metals with the concept of money. Similarly, United States collected physical gold and they imposed US dollar, replacing the pound as the new reserve currency of the world. Now, what happens with this is, as I said, with the Adam Smith's extreme capitalism, uh, devastation of all the sectors worldwide. Say, for example, there are five friends who go to a hotel, and one is the American friend is saying, "Let us do all trade in US dollars. We'll pay the hotel bill in US dollars." The five friends agree, which means that 180 plus nations have killed the demand of their own currency and artificially shot up US dollar in terms of valuation. Now the US, now there are two friends who are saying, hey, we are finding it very difficult. We work 12, 14 hours. We are still not able to make it. The US friend says, okay, well, I'll put up United Nations and World Bank. Why don't you take dollar loans from there? They take loans. Still after working 12, 14 hours, it's still not working. Two of the friends say, this doesn't work with us. One was Saddam Hussein and second was Gaddafi of Libya. Okay. And we all know what the fate was. So before even we get there, during the Vietnam War, it was uh, the allies, that was the European allies who said, your economy is tumbling. We want our gold back. Take back your dollars. It was this moment in 15th August 1971 that President Nixon came out and said, no more gold convertibility. And since we had Bretton Woods, which was already signed, all the currencies which were connected with the US dollar, all the currencies on the planet became fiat. Fiat means totally printed out of thin air. Now, obviously, if you have 180 plus nations who have killed the demand of their own currency just to keep the US dollar going, um, obviously, the fact is that that endless printing capacity is only mainly with the US. So the entire lifestyle of the West is sponsored from the pockets of the rest of the world by passing on the inflation by printing as much dollars that you print. So the entire pollution and the consumption of natural resources was of the East, and West was just printing the currency and buying the stuff. So from 1973, this entire dollarization process began, from where you know that in he the Kissinger goes to Saudi Arabia, signs an oil for security program. Entire crude oil needs to be sold in US dollar only in exchange of security that they provide. So in this dollarization process, a massive radicalization process began with petrodollars across the Indian subcontinent and the Middle East. Because this petrodollars needs to be plowed back into the American system to sustain the US Treasury and the US dollar cycles of quantitative easing and quantitative tightening. Now, what happens is um, you have the entire Saudi Arabian uh, women who used to wear colorful clothes, all the colors start vanishing. There was not a single burqa, black burqa in the Indian subcontinent prior to 1971. You have black burqas coming in the Indian subcontinent. Not just that, the Salim Javed scripting begins of Bollywood. All across you find Amitabh Bachchan showing 786 symbol, asking in mandirs, questioning the god, the Indian Bhagwan. Um, Not just that, you have no more a requirement of changing your name to a Hindu. You can still survive in Bollywood. Khans enter the Bollywood. If there was no petrodollar, there won't have been any Khan in Bollywood. Because before 1971 fiat dollar, you had to keep a Hindu name to survive in Bollywood. So this entire dollarization process began a massive radicalization wave across the world, especially in the Middle East and the Indian subcontinent. Um, you have not just Salim Javed scripting. You saw a whole wave of frame kind of movies coming in where cities after cities of Bharat are facing terror attacks, while that narrative went on of Prem being a good character. Uh, Not just that, you have this entire uh, circulation of radicalization process using underworld ISI and Dubai particularly uh, doing this entire funding. In fact, you can simply even chart out each of the Khan being directly linked with specific geographies, one with Pakistan, the other one with Saudi Arabia and UAE, and third one with Turkey and China. Okay. So this entire dollarization process entailed uh, a creation of two bucket theory, is what I call it in geopolitics, where Europe is standing at Russian borders, Russia is standing at Chinese borders, China is standing at Indian borders, India is standing at Pakistan borders, Afghanistan is standing at Pakistan borders, Iran is standing at Afghanistan borders, Iraq is standing at Iran borders, Israel is standing at Iran borders, Saudi Arabia is standing at Iran borders. So each and every nation was told that your neighbor is a rogue country which deserves sanctions. We are going to sanction them, and you can have dollars and arms as much as you want. So one bucket of nation got dollars and arms. Second bucket of nation got sanctions. This is how the US dollar continued as a single country reserve currency status till date, and it still continues in this two bucket theory. Now, what happens in this single country reserve currency format of 400 years is that during that pound and the US dollar, is that this artificial hotspot gets created, which is POK, which is Taiwan, which is Ukraine, and which is what happens between Iran and Israel. So these were artificially created hotspots just to keep the single country reserve currency format going. Now, and you can simply map it. I mean, you can simply check the date. You will always find one nation getting aid. After 2, 3 months, the neighbor getting arms and dollars. I mean, arms and one nation getting sanctioned, the other one getting dollars and arms. So you can simply map it out. Each country, North Korea, South Korea, Japan, Russia, China, China, Taiwan. You can simply map it out. It's very clearly visible. Okay. So what happens in this single country reserve currency format is um, they create a sector called the IT sector artificially. I'm calling it artificially since 1971. Uh, and the plan was that we are going to fool the talent of the world into believing that this is something great thing. Um, all the sectors worldwide of all countries were devastated in valuations. The talent was lured to the IT sector, particularly handed over coolie jobs, but the payment was so huge that they started thinking that they were intelligent. That's why they were getting those payments. Um, Not just that, in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, they ran a paid wave of individualism across the world where each person was told that you start asking rights from your parents, brothers, and sisters, um, which those generation who got fooled into that, they actually started asking rights from their parents, brothers, and sisters in the name of privacy and individualism and whatnot. Um, Once that happened, people took their they broke the family corpus, broke the family entrepreneurship model, took their share from the parents, and came to these cities, what I call as the fiat dollar city: London, Paris, Berlin, New York, California, Chicago, Mumbai, Pune, Hyderabad, Chennai, Bangalore, Sydney, Toronto. They built these fiat dollar cities by breaking the entrepreneurship corpus of the family, handing it over to the corporates, and they themselves became jobbers. Now, what happens with this is obviously the agriculture sector was totally destroyed, with which we were, at least Bharat was giving more than 27% of the world GDP, because agriculture being the core sector, and obviously all the allied sectors linked to that agriculture sector. Particularly women empowerment was with agriculture, because the concept of marriage, monogamous marriage, and women as a richest business tycoon was only seen in ancient Bharat with agriculture before the invaders came in. Indian women were the richest business tycoons on earth, with that kind of agriculture as the core sector, and textile and silk, and all kinds of domestic industries led by women as an entrepreneur. So obviously, all those sectors were destroyed. Talent was pulled and attracted towards the IT sector, where they ensured that you do coolie tasks and still get high pay, because it was directly artificially created from the endless printing machine of the Federal Reserve. Not just satisfied with that, there's a data of about 1,500 scientists being killed, and none of these scientists have, not a single case could be traced back to Russian or a Chinese hand. It is very clear who was behind it. Uh, Not even satisfied with that, they came up with startup ecosystem where they started supplying endless printing of dollars from Wall Street to e-commerce sector, saying that let's destroy entrepreneurship worldwide. So, I mean, people, citizens worldwide were surprised how these e-commerce sectors are selling below cost. Uh, but the idea was that to destroy the offline shop entrepreneurship worldwide. That was the idea, by printing endless dollars. So this entire missionarization, radicalization, uh, be it political interference from the IMF or the World Bank with those dollar loans, be it sabotage of projects or killing of scientists, everything can be linked to the endless printing machine of the US dollars with a single country reserve currency format. Now, this is what comes out of the, what I say, one life concept of hyper consumption, by polluting the rest of the world and directly printing and consuming their products and services, which was enabled by this Abrahamic economics of one life concept. Um, Not just that, uh, after that, by the late 90s, as I see, the entire reserve currency bubble was sitting in the IT sector. Now, what happened was, it was its own allies, European Union, who came up with this idea that um, we are going to de-dollarize, we are going to launch a euro currency, and with this, the US gets panicked. They drag the NATO to a Yugoslavia conflict to bring the value of euro down. Uh, this would not suffice. United States removed the requirements of Glass-Steagall Act, and they mixed the uh, commercial banking with the investment banking. So this separation, which was required till the late 90s, was removed. Now the US banks could simply trade in stocks without the knowledge of the account holders. So Investment banking was mixed with commercial banking because they could see that euro will de-dollarize, which will have an impact. Not just that, uh, after the Yugoslavia conflict, as European countries realized that this is how they got fooled to bring the value of euro down, the European Union said we are no more going to park our savings in the US dollar and the US Treasury. Uh, with that, the entire reserve currency bubble that was sitting in the IT sector burst violently in what we call as the dot-com crash of 2002. This was the first ever de-dollarization attempt uh, in which the IT sector lost about 78% of its valuations. Currently, what is going on is the final de-dollarization. There's absolutely no way IT sector in the West can survive, which is why how I give, a lot of predictions that I've given based on that. Now that you have European allies no more wanting to park their savings, so to take a revenge of that, they uh, they bring in China in the World Trade Organization, give them all the benefits of membership and export model. In 1979 itself, when Deng Xiaoping came to President Carter, the deal was that you get the US technology for manufacturing if you cut out your domestic consumption. So in 1979 itself, Deng Xiaoping had come back to China and imposed a brutal single child policy within China to cut its own consumption so that it becomes the manufacturing factory of the world. And now, after 2001, now that the Chinese Communist Party promised that they will keep their savings in the US Treasury instead of European allies, uh, this is how China became the manufacturing giant that it is today. Now, now that you have completely destroyed the family institution across the West, because dollar is playing the role of parents, dollar is playing the role of children, dollar is playing the role of husband, dollar is playing the role of wives, of the kids. Um, the family institution completely gets destroyed, and what you get is the 2008 crisis. With this crisis, this time, what happens is you have again you print endless dollars to bring the US economy out of crisis. But this time, the change is the inflation that you passed of the Western lifestyle to the rest of the world was so high that a lot many of Middle East governments started collapsing in the Middle East in what we call as the Arab Spring of 2011 due to food inflation. Okay, so to be just to give a brief of what Abrahamic economics does, the U.S. economy is bankrupt since the Vietnam War. It already is. So since then, the rest of the world is sponsoring the Western lifestyle. Now, what happens is this time the Gulf realizes that just to keep the US dollar going in the reserve currency status, they have lost about 50% of their crude oil wealth. And the countries of the world are already working on technology and options where they can replace the crude oil. They will go back to camels if this goes on. So this is the first time the Gulf has a realization that we have to do de-dollarization process seriously. Now what happens is by that time you already had uh, the visa rejected of the Chief Minister Modi. Uh, the very day the Chief Minister told that I'm going to line up Americans for visa over here. So the script, which I believe that the concept of de-dollarization, a lot of those ideas came from Shinzo Abe, along with the concept of Indo-Pacific. That also came from him. The plan was fixed where we had a gift city decided between Ahmedabad and Gandhinagar with a prima facie thought that this will become the de-dollarization hub of the world. Uh, Japan becomes the partner country for the state of Gujarat. Vibrant Gujarat summits begin. Vibrant after 5, 6 vibrant Gujarat summits, the Gujarat model gets ready, and that is showcased to the rest of the Indian states. And with that campaign, the chief minister becomes the prime minister. Now, as soon as he becomes the prime minister, the de-dollarization process kicks up. The first thing that it does is, as I said, accumulation of physical gold. So he comes up with a scheme called gold monetization scheme because Indians have more gold than the entire central banks of the whole planet put together. So he comes up with a scheme of gold monetization, which obviously fails because in Sanatan nobody would part with gold because that's the Sanatan wisdom. Um, what happens is with that, it is decided that since we are not coming with a single country reserve currency format, in fact, none of the countries, Russia, China, or Bharat, in a position to deploy a single country reserve currency world, uh, the understanding was that let the BRICS nations central banks collect gold in small proportion because we don't need in large proportion because we are not making a single country reserve currency. So the process begins. With that, de-radicalization process begins where the first UAE Crown Prince visit comes 2015 something where he's coming to Bharat and watching there's some intolerance debate going on here. He goes back to UAE and opens up a tolerance ministry. Not just that, he sends a prince to Akshardham in Delhi where they decide that if the entire Gulf needs to be de-radicalized, they have seen the Russian, Chinese, even the US methods of de-radicalization of bombers going from above. They have seen the Chinese method of de-radicalization where they steal organs from the Uyghur bodies. They settled with Bharatiya, Yog, Mandir and Ayurveda. So the Gulf decided to de-radicalize with Yog, Mandir and Ayurveda. Um, with that, the Prime Minister says now no more any kind of multilateral trade pacts. Let's cancel out all multilateral trade pacts. Each of the countries will come line up. We are going to uh, negotiate with each of them bilateral free trade agreement. So when the right time comes to flip out of the dollar, we just have to negotiate with one person. Okay, because in multilateral bodies, dollar sits by default. Now, the first offer that is given, I believe, to Xi Jinping in 2018, that let's trade in yuan and rupees, um, that was rejected. Xi Jinping was just getting the uh, control of the Central Military Commission that time. That was rejected by China. But after COVID, Xi Jinping had a realization that um, they toiled for the whole world for 40 years and just made 3 trillion in reserves, whereas US printed about 14 trillion during the COVID time and distributed to Americans for free. This is the first time Xi Jinping realizes that de-dollarization is the only process that needs to be speeded up. So by the end of 2022, there were only two people in the Politburo who were pro-exports model. One was Li Keqiang, the premier, and second was Wang Yang. Both of them were removed from the powerful Politburo. And by March 2023, March 2023, the entire Politburo has become anti-exports. Now that Xi Jinping realized that with a single child policy, just to keep the US dollar going in the reserve currency status, they have destroyed their social setup. In fact, by 2029, there will be about 40 million men without any women to marry. This is the condition that they have reached to. Um, Xi Jinping comes back to the same process of Sanatani economics, where now he wants the birth rate back. There are queues in Chinese mandirs, 3 long hour waiting times. The festival days are increased. Uh, the exports to the EU and the US is brought down to about 12 to 15% as of now in the last 8-12 months. And all the BRICS nations are now working towards a common currency because you have most of the oil producing and oil consuming nations in the BRICS plus right now. Uh, the requirement, the very fact that Xi Jinping himself is pushing BRICS shows that it's very clear that he has given up on yuan. because you don't require BRICS applications for imposing yuan. So this entire propaganda is just a propaganda that yuan can replace. Yuan cannot replace. It's laughable. Um, so a new format is being worked upon, and the entire process of internal economics is now going to be more of domestic consumption, festivals, mandir ecosystem across the geography. I mean, from Saudi Arabia till Laos, Cambodia. In fact, Saudi Arabia is giving advertisements. I mean, the uh, last 2 3 weeks, you can clearly see they are uh, propagating those ancient mandir towns in Saudi Arabia where the incense sticks used to go from the Silk Road across Saudi Arabia till the Temple Mount in Israel. In fact, the Jewish Bible talks about incense sticks coming from Bharat for the puja that needs to be done in the Temple Mount. So each of them are moving towards a decolonization process where they are also trying to find out their Chandravanshi roots, which I say they have Chandravanshi roots, Saudi Arabian people. The dash of color has come back to their clothes. In fact, in the last MOU that the Prime Minister went for the Mandir in UAE, that was signed, not just that a female minister in the UAE cabinet, but she was wearing colorful clothes, and she initiated the handshake on her own with the Indian male counterpart. So this entire process of decolonization, de-radicalization, decommunism, de-missionarization will go together along with de-dollarization, which is why Hollywood and Bollywood both are completely defunded and they will have to shift uh, uh, to traditional hotspots. So I'm not surprised that the Bollywood will shift to Noida. They will have to shift to Noida. Similarly, US Hollywood is also shifting out. So because the de-dollarization pattern in all countries is going to be the same because it was the same scheme how it worked. So at the things that I've predicted next 24 months, the entire IT and the banking sector in the West will be wrapped up because all this was bogus, completely bogus. In fact, the IT sector companies in the West, the way they value intangible assets in the balance sheet, if any Indian IT company does that kind of accounting, they would be in jail. Okay. So this entire artificial prop up of the Western assets across the board is going to be wiped out in the coming in this decade itself, which is how I give prediction for what's the dollar rate going to be. Now, when we talk about Sanatan economics, one of the major components being the Mandir ecosystem, because it was the Mandirs who were, because that was the institution with which we gave 27% to the world GDP. If somebody tells us that we never had any institution and we were giving 27% world GDP for 1800 years, it's laughable. Okay. So our institution was Mandir. So Mandir ecosystem needs to be set back. The entire life cycle economics of festivals which ran with those TPs of Mandir activities preserved that cash flow without a central bank. It almost had a role like of a central bank. Not just that, each and every festival of the state, be it the monarch's birth, the marriage anniversary, from one Monday to the second Monday, the entire procession would go. The entire economics would happen with that. Now, all of these festival activities have products and services which are customized and low ticket. None of the capitalists would like to invest in those kind of seasonal festivals. So this ensured that extreme capitalism would never to take over that kind of economics. So something can happen to California, Chicago, and New York, which I believe it's happening because they are first in the script of the IT and the finance sector collapse worldwide in this de-dollarization process. Similarly, something can happen to London, Paris, Berlin, Sydney, okay, Toronto, but nothing will ever happen to the Mandir towns because the cash flow of the festival activities runs the economy eternally, which is why we call it Sanatan economics, that which is sustainable. Now, this ensures that 5% people would never ever have their hands on 90% of the wealth of the nation, which is why all the indexes which comes from Abrahamic economics are totally bogus. In fact, per capita income is the most bogus index. If one person holds the entire wealth, still the per capita number of the country will come the same. You calculate, it will come the same number. It is just laughable. Okay. Similarly, GDP, the formula is so stupid. In fact, if you look at the formula, it adds consumption along with investment. Now, tell me, if you are measuring, I mean, an 11th class commerce student can tell if we are measuring financial performance of a particular entity, how can we add a capital item with a revenue item? Now, in the West, since you had the single country reserve currency format, there was no difference between a capital and a revenue item. You could print endlessly because 180 plus nations have given up their right to print. So, what happens is uh, in the West, uh, the GDP uh, will always be topping because consumption is added to the investment. So even if the government spending continuously, which is goes on with the printing, despite the fact that there is no economic activity at all, the GDP will still be up. So because you had that endless printing machine, so this entire Abrahamic economics is an outcome of not knowing how to earn money, and it's been 500 years. And this comes from this base thought process that you have only one life, that you are the body and not the soul, which I believe it has started reversing because once you don't have that printing capacity and that single country reserve currency format, what's going to happen is the kids are going to come back home. They won't be able to pay those EMIs. When the kids come back home, they are going to insist that you cannot divorce because they want to stay together. And well, if you don't have to divorce, it's basically nothing but those 7 oaths of Sanatan. So, overall, what it looks like is that the world is moving towards a Sanatan economics model. I will not be surprised if you have very soon the Prime Minister doing some Pran Pratishtha in Saudi Arabia as well. So, from Saudi Arabia till Laos, Cambodia, you will have magnificent mandirs being built because that is the only sustainable economics which can move forward, where you have the Gurukul campuses within the Mandir campuses and where uh, profits is capped. This is the only civilization which celebrates ethical profits as a community festival on Dhanteras. This is the only civilization which puts on its account books what we write as Shri Sabha, which means I'm going to cap my profit only up to 25% of cost. This is the only civilization where the businessmen put up a chair outside the shop and uh, until they ensure that the next shop also had the first customer of the day, the chair will be put out as a symbolism that the guy hasn't got the first customer as yet. So I think even in ancient Bharat, when we used to have big businesses, we had a concept called Shreshti. Only the Shreshti would lead those big businesses, and the Shreshtis are the ones who are ethically and morally considered of the highest order across the community. Only those would lead those big businesses compared to what we see in the West, which is the top management resigns first of all before they file for bankruptcy. They leave first, making all the profits and money. So there's a big difference between what Sanatan economics model is compared to what the Abrahamic economics is. And I think the rest of the world is literally looking for this wisdom. The more they look at Bharat, uh, uh, they want Bharat to dig out how ancient Bharat used to function. And I believe that a lot of the Indian subcontinent, the Bharatiya Mahadweep, is certainly going to adopt the Mandir ecosystem and revive back their cultural roots with the ancient Bharat. I won't be surprised if we move to that. Now, as I've debunked GDP and the per capita index, there has to be new indexes which will replace these Abrahamic economics indexes, which were designed to fool the world and to stay on the top ranking just artificially. So you won't be surprised by 2030, uh, the entire passport regime is going to flip back. The entire university ranking is going to flip back. The entire visa thing is going to flip back. Uh, Post 2030, I am very doubtful about if at all any of the Western experience or qualification will even be considered as a working experience or qualification. Post 2030, it is also doubtful if English language will anymore be the operating language in the world. People, at least in the countries of the global south, I suspect that people would laugh at you post 2030 if you speak in English language, because it will be seen as a sign of colonial slavery. And mind you, it is going to be the tech which is going to enable this transition of removing English language from being the operating language of the world. And the other day I was seeing how the Western tech, including those big biggies who like Elon Musk, questioning how the government of Bharat asking them to remove some of the accounts because they were causing law and order issues in Bharat. I've clearly written in the tweet that post 2030, entire Western tech is going to be completely deplatformed from the BRICS Plus nations if this kind of attitude continues. Because understand that it's we who are giving you access and the privilege that you make money from us. So that's not how the world is going to move. Post 2030, the Indian foreign minister is going to be the most powerful man on earth, and prime minister is out of question. Even meeting him is out of question. So I do believe that a lot of what the new world order is going to be decided by Delhi, and those companies who would wish to survive in this changing world order of a multipolar, multi-currency format world. Uh, these companies, they have already started shifting to Bharat, and because they clearly do understand that if they wish to survive, they will have to. So a lot many of companies I see, they meet the prime minister, they take the India business head along. After the meeting, they come back to the West, announce layoffs, shut down the offices, and announce India plan of operations. So I see by 2030, a lot of big chunk of Western companies who would want to survive would have become Bharatiya companies by then, with global heads of operations sitting as a resident Bharatiya from Bharat operating businesses worldwide. So I see this particular IMEC corridor, uh, the Silk Route, as the de-dollarization, decommunism, de-radicalization, de-missionization, and decolonization route of the world, which even the Prime Minister says is going to have relevance for the next 1,000 years. And I believe that Sanatan economics is going to play a massive role, not just with the Mandir ecosystem, but reinvigorating the family led entrepreneurship model back once the real valuations come back. I mean, the way they've been playing with all the other sectors is like, say, for example, there is 1 kg of wheat. The West floated about 1 lakh kgs of paper wheat in the market just to kill the valuation for the agriculture sector. Okay, similarly for the gold, for the last 40 years, I believe it was artificially manipulated by LBMA and some of the entities in US, just so that nobody is tempted to de-dollarize. Because once the central banks start collecting physical gold, it's the very next temptation is going to be de-dollarization. So they manipulated gold for so long. But I believe that now a lot of the West is aligned on this process, which means that uh, as I see the Sanatan economics and geopolitics shaping up a multipolar world order in the next decade, solidifying the position of US as an ally of Bharat, just like UK was an ally of US. This is where it is heading towards. I think I'm done with the talk. We can have questions.
That was brilliant, Dr. Shah. A lot of concepts which I even didn't think about. Linking back Kula and Jati and Varna back into the economic model, plus the concept of Punarjanma. Very, very good. Very good. So we can have questions now. Please raise your hand in Zoom. It's in the reactions menu at the bottom of your Zoom window, or you can type in chat. So seems like, you were very clear, you flowed. The information was flowing, as you spoke. And I think people are still digesting on what you talked about, many, many concepts. So to begin with, let me ask one question. So this Kula, family and Jati community and so on and so forth. So initially, we had in the family, there is to be a skill. Each Jati had their own skill, which they propagated through generations, essentially through the family. So community through the family backwards. Now, how did that influence the economy? And one thing you said, that there was nothing called the recession with this type of economics. Can you please elaborate
Nothing
on
called
that?
inflation. There was no inflation.
There is no inflation, because how would that work? Because so if one of the communities, so there was essentially a meaningful understanding between different communities. Is that what it means?
Yes. So the barber would cut your hair for the entire year, and if you have agricultural land, he will take a little bit of wheat and rice from you and go.
Right.
It's pretty simple, but that's not going to be the way ahead. But at least what I'm seeing ahead is an evolved barter system between nations. In fact, Sri Lanka just yesterday gave a hint. They said the Indian tourists are going to pay in INR, and whatever we are going to buy from Bharat, we'll spend that INR for that. That is what Sri Lanka said just yesterday.
Okay. One question in the chat. So Chandradhar is asking about foreign tourists coming in for Ayurvedic rejuvenation. So it's sort of a medical tourism. That's other than temple economics. Essentially, Ayurveda also will come in the picture, I guess.
Part of decolonization process, because what happens with allopathy is it works on the symptoms very nicely, but the root cause remains as it is. There is also another problem with allopathy is a lot of pharmaceutical companies are collaborating in adding compounds in the pills in a way that, say, suppose a victim is having diabetes right now, the diabetes pills will have such compounds that after 6 years you will also get blood pressure. Now the blood pressure pills also begin. So it's kind of a collaboration which is happening with this Abrahamic economics of only profits as a focus. So and it never works on the root cause, because they want continuous profits, right? So you need to be a consistent customer for them. For them, you are just what to say, just nothing. So they want bills to be made. So this is what happens when you come out of that traditional structure. Now, in the Brahmins, who were supposed to be the Veds, they were never supposed to make economic benefit out of the activity that they do. Now, that Ved used to do the root cause analysis and medicine with the Ayush Paddhati, and without any exploitation of finances, because Brahmins were not allowed to do financial enrichment. That was the kind of society. But with the Western capitalism, Abrahamic economics, they would keep the dead body for 7 days and make bills out of it. And that's the flip side of outside the Sanatan economics model.
I have a question, Dr. Shah. Even though the West is investing money in Sanatan economics, at the same time, they don't like the Sanatan economics to be going up. So you think there are going to be some negative reaction from the West or the developed countries?
Well, like there are 2-3 things in it. The first thing is it was the torture of the Chinese labor based on which the West was enjoying the weekend of the art, culture, democracy, freedoms. And basically, China was sponsoring the democracy of the rest of the world, the democracy election format. Okay. Once you begin manufacturing home and want made in USA products at a price point where Americans can buy it for daily usage, what that means is you have to trim the economy by 60%, 60% minimum, and finish off all those freebies those labor rights, the minimum wage rules, and stuff like that. I believe that some of the signals are showing that some of the countries are moving towards that in the West now, which means that there's going to be a lot of chaos between the states and the federal government in the West. Not just that, they will move towards more and more communism, which is why I believe that they will impose the CBDC, which has complete control over who you are going doing transactions with. Everybody will come in a single ledger, all the bank accounts, which is like they can control the masses. They are also talking about a universal basic income, which is to say that they are going to steal the money from capitalists and fund the universal basic income. The idea looks very tempting in the starting years, but once the capitalists understand that you are stealing money from their pocket and giving to these unproductive people, prepare for a new virus, right? So this is what the West is heading towards. Now, as long as your question on challenge to Sanatan, well, I believe this is the last geography which has the consumption population maintained at least for the next 30 years. So companies are seeing, including the West, that this is the market which cannot be damaged, or in fact needs to be even propped up or built up even better further. So I don't see any kind of challenges that they will do to the Bharatiya citizens. But in terms of Sanatan, well, the Western companies do not have any problem. They don't have any allegiance towards religion, city, or a country. They only matter about profit to them. So I don't see a big challenge to Sanatan. In fact, it's they who will start writing about Sanatan very soon. That is how I see it.
Vivek ji, please go ahead.
Hello, Dr. Ankit Shah. I'm your associate in the IHR group, Indian History and Awareness Program by the Sarvato Ganga Padhyaji. And I also came on the book release. So I just want to ask you one thing, that as the number of the Ayurvedic doctors are increasing in USA, and many Europeans and Asian people are getting interested into the Sanatan, but still we are not going on that narrative that Aryan invention theory still is the part of our curriculum. Many things, even this government is very reluctant to change the whole scenario at the burst. But it's taking a lot of time. So if we'll take another 20 years, then what will be impact
No.
on the
I'll tell you, big changes are coming in the third term itself. I don't think it's going to be jet speed in the third term. So be it syllabus, education format, the judiciary format, big changes are coming. So I don't think speed will be a problem. In fact, people will feel it is lots of speed which is taken up in the third term.
Thank you, Dr. Shah. Whatever you said is revolutionary, at least to me. I have not heard of this concept before. Of course, I'm not all understanding, but who are the proponents of this concept, Dr. Shah?
Concept of?
This concept of Sanatan economics and...
This is me.
This is me. So where can I read more about it? It's totally revolutionary.
So this is the book which is coming up. This is the third book. I'm still working on it because I want it to be in a way where multiple centuries can benefit out of it. So it will have some patience. I mean, I was thinking of launching it quite ahead, but I'm still taking more time because I want to refine it in a way where it's able to plug all the gaps of Adam Smith and Karl Marx. I don't want any loopholes pending, because my understanding is this is just an ancient Bharat seed thought process which I will be laying. I want next 100,000 more people then further working from that base thought. So I want to design the book in that way, that it helps multiple centuries.
Dr. Shah, does it mean that we go back towards our ancient or our history and restart or something like that?
Well, you can't say exactly that, because let me just give you an example with a recent practical example. Like, we have the concept of independent director in companies. Now, we are not saying that we want to dilute the company format. What I am saying is, can we have a Shreshti director instead of an independent director? Okay. Now, an independent director might get compromised at multiple levels, whereas the Shreshti director, who has a dharmic base and has an acceptance in the community that morally, ethically he has a high ground, would certainly have more better inputs in the management rather than an independent director who comes from a Western template classroom. So we are saying that let's bridge the ancient Bharat objective. Let's make a bridge from what we have as of now. We can't be saying that अच्छा उसको पूरा copy paste कर लो जो पहले था. No, that's not possible anymore. So if, say for example, in medicine, while I agree that does uh, Ayurvedic does root cause solution, but I would still suggest that diagnosis should be based on allopathy. Let the latest equipment diagnose the thing, and the treatment can be Ayurvedic. Okay. I'm just giving you a loosened example, not exactly for all cases, but just giving you a hint that we don't have to completely dissect the reality of today. We can bridge to the ancient objective, if not the method.
I mean, so thank you all for joining, and hope to have Dr. Shah, once you have your book ready to publish, you can please join and present it again in summary of the book. And
I have a book launch. I have a book launch within the next 2 weeks in Delhi. This is on BRICS currency, how BRICS expansion should be based on two principles. One is agreement to disagree and agreement to decolonize. These are the two principles I have laid out for the BRICS expansion. After that, the Sanatan economics book will come.
Wonderful, wonderful. We look forward to buying and reading your book, and hopefully the concept of Sanatan economics gets implemented, not just talked about in theory. Oh, excellent. Thank you so much, Dr. Shah, for joining us today. Wonderful presentation. And thank you all for joining. Hopefully, not just enjoyed it, but also you got to learn quite a few things, new concepts, and some background on Sanatan economics and the future as well. Thank you all. Namaste.
Dhanyavad.